These are the most shocking, interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Doctors who treated the plague in the 17th century wore waxed cloaks, gloves, and masks stuffed with herbs and sponges soaked in vinegar, following the idea that scented filters could block harmful air. Their wooden canes allowed them to examine patients. In the 50s of the 19th century, the British Army studied the Blue Peacock Project, a plan to deploy nuclear mines in West Germany as a barrier during the Cold War. The memo suggested using live chickens to keep the devices warm so that the timers would work in winter. Cradle from the late 18th century, a rigid wooden frame with lacing, a protective bow over the head, and a footrest, used by many indigenous families of North America to secure and carry babies. Australia, circa 1920. An artist on stage uses a device that hides her head behind a hood and braces, while hidden wiring lights the light bulbs above her head. United States, 1961, 1971. The M28, Davy Crockett were very small nuclear combat systems that launched the device from a recoilless cannon at about 4 kilometers. More than 2,000 rounds were fired. These are mill workers in Fayetteville, Tennessee, United States, year 1910, photographed by Lewis Hine to document child labor in textile mills. His field notes say the small girl in front could not recall her own name, a detail he used to push for reform. Screw-propelled test vehicle. Twin helical drums let it move over deep snow and bogs. It was slow and unstable on firm ground, so the idea lived on only in niche rescue machines like the Soviet ZIL-2906. April 1912, North Atlantic. Lifeboats from RMS Titanic come alongside the rescue ship RMS Carpathia, a rare photo from the rescue itself. Carpathia received about 705 survivors and then sailed for New York. Blouberg, Cape Town, 1944. Crews pull the end of a new underwater cable to the shore, part of a wartime communication line through which voice and telegraphy were transmitted across the oceans. Shore crews used men, winches, and tides to bring the armored cable ashore. Irving Penn, Morocco, 1971. A man in a jalaba stands next to a woman in a haiku, completely covered in a veil, photographed in his portable daylight studio against a simple background. Penn used a large format camera. Year 1945. An early home television with a small cathode ray screen in a wood cabinet, marketed as a low-cost set by makers like Viewtone. After the war, stations reopened, and mass production plus live sports sent U.S. July 1945, Lorient, France. General Charles de Gaulle visits the destroyed port 2 months after the German surrender and shakes hands with children. The city has endured a prolonged blockade of its submarine base. Late 1800s, New York. Madame Rowley's toilet mask was a rubber face glove sold to wear at night to lighten the complexion and smooth spots. It was advertised with an 1875 patent and claimed medical praise. Russia, year 1914. A ground seesaw gunnery trainer let crews practice aiming and managing recoil with an aircraft gun before flying. Simple rigs like this taught handling and burst control for early biplanes. Russia, around 1917. Tsar Nicholas II's touring car fitted with front skis and a Kagres rubber belt half-track for winter travel. The system was developed by engineer Adolphe Kagres in the Imperial Garage and later influenced Citroën and snow vehicles worldwide. In 1959, German geologist Gerhard Klammer informed prosecutor Fritz Bauer that a wanted wartime official, Adolf Eichmann, lived near Buenos Aires under the name Ricardo Clement. Bauer passed on a tip to Israeli intelligence, which identified the perpetrator and captured him in 1960. Late 1930s, 1945, occupied Manchuria. Photo linked to Unit 731, a secret military medical unit led by Shiro Ishii that researched disease agents and delivery methods. China. Lotus feet were created by tightly binding young girls' feet to keep them very small, once seen as beauty and status. The The practice was banned in 1912 and largely ended by the 1930s. World War II, Europe. Prisoners in striped uniforms perform forced labor at a German camp, using small rail carts to move earth under guard. The camp system held millions across occupied areas, and photos like this document its scale. United States, 1970s. Hitchhiking was common among teens and travelers as a free way to get around before rideshare and stricter road rules. By the late 1970s, safety campaigns and new transport options made the practice fade. Mid-1900s, Nightingale Ward. 20-30 beds in one open room, so a small team could watch everyone, with tall windows for airflow and curtain rails for modesty. From the late 1960s, hospitals moved to smaller rooms to cut infections. 1930s, beauty salon device. Small glass nozzles on a rubber hose drew suction from a vacuum pump to lift the skin. Ads claimed better circulation and clearer complexions. An early version of the vacuum facial used for decades. 1969, demolition workers shoot a quick frame on a surviving slate table inside a fire-damaged billiard hall during cleanup. The level slate still plays true amid debris, so the room briefly becomes a makeshift arena. London, 1963. Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, shows his swollen fists after his bout with Henry Cooper at Wembley. Cooper floored Clay in round 4, but cuts ended it in round 5, giving Clay a technical win. Year 1955, Eglin Air Force Base. Florida's last recorded Civil War veteran, Bill Lundy, poses beside a U.S. Air Force jet. He had claimed service as a Confederate drummer boy, a life that bridged muskets to supersonic flight. Year 1942. Life shows a B-17E Flying Fortress with its full team, 10 aircrew plus about 26 ground staff, lined up with bombs, fuel, and support trucks. One mission needed dozens beyond the pilots, from armorers and mechanics to radio and ordnance crews. Landes, southwest France, 19th century. Shepherds used tall stilts called échasses to cross marshy heath and see their flocks from far away. They could walk long distances at a steady pace and even knit while standing watch. Boston Children's Hospital kept a small herd of cows on site to supply fresh milk for young patients before reliable refrigeration and delivery. The practice ended around 1930 as pasteurized milk and modern supply chains took over. Pablo Picasso lifts his giant Saint Bernard, Bob, for a playful portrait at his home in southern France, late 1950s. He kept many animals. Famous among them was Lump the dachshund, and they often appeared in his work and photos. Paris, 1883. First concept sketch by Maurice Couchelin and Émile Nouguier for Eiffel's Tower. It later rose to about 300 meters for the 1889 World's Fair. Chicago, 1871. The Burnt District Coffee House opened in the ruins days after the Great Chicago Fire, serving workers and displaced families. The fire destroyed about 3 square miles and left over 100,000 people without homes. Often labeled Texas, circa 1890 to 1900. A stagecoach halted as riders use a rope from a tree, captioned as the capture of a stagecoach thief. Many images like this were staged or reenacted for souvenir cards, so the exact event is uncertain. October 27, 1947. Navy Day cover postmarked aboard USS Krishna, ARL 38, with a 3-cent Jefferson stamp, the normal letter rate then. The first-class price did not rise to 4 cents until 1958. United States, 1922. The Douglas Fir Log motorhome by Wade mounted a hollowed fir log on a truck chassis and toured the country as a rolling timber ad. Inside were a compact kitchen, bed, and small desk. Early proof that road campers could feel like tiny homes. Manhattan, year 1930. Crews hand-set paving bricks on West 28th Street, working in panels and sweeping sand into the joints. Brick streets ran quieter and smoother than old stone, and sections could be lifted later for utility repairs. September 1959, Des Moines. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev tries an American hot dog and tells reporters, "It is excellent. Ours are good, but yours are better." His 2-week U.S. tour included Iowa farm visits with Roswell Garst to study modern agriculture. August 1, 1969, Lahore. President Richard Nixon hops off the trunk of his limousine during a packed motorcade with Pakistan's President Yahya Khan. The sudden move broke protocol and sent his security details scrambling as the car pushed through dense crowds. Jersey City, 1963. The Statue of Liberty stands beyond rows of utility poles and marshland, a view from the working edge of New York Harbor. The scene shows how industry and new roads framed the monument before later park renewals. 1930s, Tiffany & Co.'s barware, a silver drink stirrer in the brand's robin egg blue box with felt sleeve. Luxury houses sold compact bar and smoking tools for home entertaining between the wars. Mid-1970s wall panel for wired intercom audio system. Small triangular groups with 3 holes are 3-pin DIN connectors for speakers or microphone tubes. Many homes have one device per room for playing the radio, talking between rooms, or turning on the sound of the TV. 1979. President Jimmy Carter installed solar hot water panels on the White House roof to showcase clean energy. They were removed during 1986 roof work under Ronald Reagan, and new solar panels returned in the early 2010s under Barack Obama. Atlanta, 1864. A busy street of wagons and gas lamps, photographed just before the city's evacuation in the Civil War. As a crucial rail hub, Atlanta's capture and the fires of September 1864 cleared much of downtown and reshaped its growth. Mid-20th century telephone stand, likely Italian giltwood. A lipped top tray with carry handle and a lower slot for the phone book or notepad, made to move a desk phone from room to room before cordless sets. World War II, Eastern Front. A young Red Army member wears the Soviet SSH-40 steel helmet and a standard canteen on leather gear. Teens often served as runners, medics, and lookouts in units from 1941 to 1945. Pearl Harbor, 19th of March 1943. Engineers used a par-buckling system with 21 winches and shore anchors to roll the capsized battleship USS Oklahoma upright after torpedo hits in December 1941. The ship was later decommissioned and sank under tow in 1947. 1920, a seaside storm and dune erosion pulled this wood frame house off its foundation and dropped it onto the beach at a steep angle. Early coastal homes on shifting sand often had shallow footings, so whole structures could slide when the shoreline moved. New York, 1939. Showmen. Billy Rose's show Aquacade featured aquabellas, synchronized swimmers performing by the pool and displaying swimsuits from the past, present, and imaginary future. Q Sun, South Vietnam, December 9, 1965. A U.S. Navy corpsman carries a wounded Marine through thick jungle during an evacuation. Corpsmen served with Marine units, giving frontline aid and guiding casualties to helicopter pickup zones. Liverpool, 1967. After the Beatles released Penny Lane, fans kept taking the street signs. This photo shows 2 girls unscrewing one. The city later painted the name on the wall and, in 2007, fitted theft-resistant signs. London, 1963. Models Una Dunn, Nena Dubois, and Anne Milling show fruit-trimmed hats from the House of Dior's millinery under Marc Bohan. Couture houses held separate hat shows then to drive press photos and shop orders. Oxford, early 1940s. Researchers built small fermentation rigs to extract penicillin for the first controlled treatments. These pilot plants paved the way for wartime deep tank production in Britain and the United States. Hanoi, 1972. Actress Jane Fonda was photographed in front of a North Vietnamese anti-aircraft installation during her controversial anti-war visit. A later version is that she issued identity cards to prisoners, which led to harm. Late 1970s, 1980s floppy disk notcher. It punches a square notch in a 5.25-inch disk, so drives allow writing. Adding a second notch let users flip a single-sided disk and use the other side. Year 1926. Greek strongman Gus Lessis does a backbend with a massive stone on his chest, while an assistant breaks it with a sledgehammer, a classic stage stunt. Performers used breath control, an arched posture, and hidden padding to spread the load safely. The bundles are used in a black money trick. Plain black paper is sold as banknotes, colored for transportation, with the promise that it can be cleaned with a special liquid. White dust is an ordinary powder, often vitamin C or chalk, and paper never turns into real money. January 28, 1986. Close view of Space Shuttle Challenger at liftoff shows a telltale plume near the right solid rocket booster's aft field joint. A faulty O-ring seal let hot gases escape, leading to structural failure 73 seconds after launch. Berlin, 1923. A World War I veteran with limb loss sits on a small trolley and asks passers-by for coins. During the Weimar hyperinflation, savings vanished, and many disabled veterans lived on street help and small pensions. Early 1900s, 1930s silver dance purse, minaudière, coin slots, a tiny powder compartment with lid, and a space for calling cards, worn on a chain. It let someone carry fare and makeup hands-free at theaters or dances. Eastern Front, around 1941, a German war correspondent crouches beside a disabled Soviet BT-5 light tank with an Arriflex 35 motion picture camera. The compact reflex camera let Frontline crews film combat through the lens, with fast lens changes for newsreels. Late 1930s, early 1940s. Adolf Hitler studies a large-scale model of Germany, architect Albert Speer's plan to rebuild Berlin using a grandiose north-south axis. The projects included a giant domed hall designed for hundreds of thousands of spectators and a triumphal arch larger than the Parisian one. Mid-1930s, Berghof. Josef and Magda Goebbels pose with their children next to Adolf Hitler, a rare family photo from the regime's inner circle. Such images help to create an image of home comfort. Los Angeles, 1977. John Travolta and Olivia Newton. John rehearsed the carnival finale of Grease before filming the movie You're the One I Want. Olivia's famous black trousers were vintage, 50s, and so tight that they were tailored specifically for this scene. Eastern Front, World War II. German troops haul field guns with horse teams while fording a stream. Despite the image of a mechanized force, the Wehrmacht moved most supplies by horse. About 3 million animals served. 1960. Pilot Jerry Cobb, standout of the privately funded Mercury 13, trains on a gimbal rig that simulates a tumbling capsule. She aced Mercury medical tests, but the program was halted. The first American woman flew in 1983. Left, 1946. Norma Jean Dougherty posed as a brunette model just before studios renamed her Marilyn Monroe. By 1952, she had dyed to near white blonde under stylist Sylvia Barnhart, a look that powered her star image in early 50s films. February 1939, Academy Awards. Shirley Temple presents Walt Disney with a special Oscar with 7 mini statuettes for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first animated feature film. His stunning success funded the new Disney studio and proved that animated films can become major box office hits. Iwo Jima, February-March, 1945. A U.S. Marine secures an M1 Garand rifle while sitting on captured ammunition crates among the island's uneven volcanic soil. The semi-automatic Garand allows Marines to fire faster than the bolt-action rifles of many opponents. Berlin, May 1945. Red Army soldiers stand in front of the destroyed Reichstag, a symbol they sought to capture in a victory photograph, although Parliament has not sat there since 1933. After reunification, it was rebuilt and reopened in 1999 with a Norman Foster glass dome. Serbia, 1915. Mechanics fixed a machine gun on a light reconnaissance monoplane, creating one of the first self-made combat aircraft in the Army. The first Balkan crews also manually dropped small bombs, proof that aviation was shifting from reconnaissance to combat operations. February 21, 1885. Crowds gathered in a snow-covered alley to dedicate the Washington Monument, a 55-foot obelisk that was finally completed after a 10-year hiatus. Bonne Terre, Missouri, 1917. The miners of the St. Joseph lead mine used trapezoidal mining, standing on suspended platforms bolted to the ceiling of the cave to drill and blast ore. Later, giant stopes were flooded in one of the largest underground lakes in the world, which is now a well-known place for scuba diving. Around 1928, Winston Churchill spends a weekend hunting near Dieppe with his son Randolph and fashion icon Coco Chanel, whom he met through the Duke of Westminster. Later, Churchill noted in his diary that during these visits to Normandy, he was struck by Chanel's energy and hospitality. February 20th, 1962. The Mercury 7 capsule, named Druzhba 7, was lifted aboard the ship after 3 orbits around the Earth and landing in the Atlantic. A malfunction of the heat shield sensor caused him to return to the atmosphere with a backpack attached to it, and recovery took place within a few minutes. Los Angeles, 1921. Mission Art built a giant camera into a trucka lens on the front, bellows the size of a room, and a darkroom inside, to capture very large negatives on location. Copper ladle from a petroleum flashpoint tester. Technicians filled it with a small fuel sample and warmed it to see the first moment vapors briefly ignite. The wooden handle kept hands cool, while labs set safety grades for kerosene, gasoline, and oils. Indiana, Pennsylvania, 1945. Actor and military pilot Jimmy Stewart sits on the counter of his family hardware store and calls about a fishing trip. Having just completed flights in Europe, he received the Distinguished Service Cross. Italian prodigy Pierino Gamba conducted full orchestras before age 10 and was touring concert halls in the 1940s. He later led major ensembles and made hit recordings that kept his name on classical charts for years. Santa Monica, 1929. Joan Crawford and Dorothy Sebastian pose right on the beach with a portable gramophone on a spring drive that played shellac records at 78 revolutions per minute. This couple just starred in the movie Our Modern Girls. Burbank, 1951. A heat wave sent Bardwell and McAllister electronics workers to the line in shorts because the plant had no air conditioning. They were assembling film lights and camera gear used on Hollywood sets. In 1945, Broadway performer Penny Edwards walked through New York in a barrel with the inscription, "I contributed, and you," to attract the attention of passers-by. She had just donated her entire outfit to the United National Clothing Drive charity, which collected clothes for people in Europe. Aleppo, 1920s. An Armenian woman shows tattoos on her face and arms, which were used in some parts of Syria to identify women taken into Bedouin or Kurdish families during and after the First World War. In 1964, an Amphicar Model 770 plied the Regent's Canal in London. This German-made car with 2 rear propellers and sealed doors moved through the water at a speed of about 7 knots. From 1961 to 1968, about 3,900 cars were produced. In 1910, Romanian engineer Henri Coanda presented in Paris the Coanda 1910, an experimental aircraft built without a propeller, which used a ducted fan to divert hot gases to the rear. It was tested on the ground and may have made a jump, but no confirmed flight was recorded. In 1923, an early Greyhound safety bus operated on the Hibbing-Duluth route, located next to the Union Bus Depot. The Greyhound Company, which was born in the 1910s in mining towns in northern Minnesota, by the mid-20s of the last century, was already connecting cities with fast intercity bus service. Between 1851 and 1896, Nasser al-Din Shah Qajar made this mirror self-portrait in Tehran with the camera visible and his household around him. He was an early royal photographer who kept studios in Golestan Palace and left many images. Alabama, 1962. A taxi marked "Colored Only" shows how public transport was separated by law and custom. These rules ended after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which changed travel across the South. Ansel Adams at a KABC microphone in 1979, the American photographer famed for Yosemite and the zone system. He injured his nose in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake as a child and never had it repaired. April 18, 1906. A magnitude 7.8 quake and days of fires flattened much of downtown San Francisco. About 80% of the city was damaged or destroyed, displacing more than 250,000 residents. Late 1800s, Fraser River, British Columbia. A fisherman from Kamloops, Savfk PMC, works on wooden platforms above the rapids, using a long net to catch salmon during the race. These platforms allow fishermen to confidently stay on the surface of fast water and pull fish out of the current. Ancient Roman game board called rota, for 2 players with 3 pieces each. You aim to make a line of 3 along the spokes. After all pieces are placed, players slide along the lines to open points, much like circular tic-tac-toe. July 7, 1957. A U.S. Army Redstone rocket was displayed inside Grand Central Terminal to showcase new aerospace technology. This short-range ballistic rocket later powered the Mercury Redstone flights, lifting America's first astronaut in 1961. Late 1800s to early 1900s, workers cut big blocks of lake and river ice in winter and hauled them by horse sled to ice houses packed with sawdust. This ice trade kept food cold until electric refrigerators spread in the 1920s and 1930s. Boulder County, Colorado, circa 1890. A frontier family poses by a one-room log cabin beneath the Flatirons. Many homesteads like this housed large families in a single space while they worked ranches and nearby mines. Paramount Motion Picture School, 1925. Applicants pose in simple stagewear for screening and training in silent-era technique. Studios ran such schools to teach camera presence and secure fresh talent for contract roles. 1953 Street Demo. A dealer shows a sedan with a new car air conditioning unit and invites people to feel the cool interior. Early systems were rare and costly then, so salesmen used sidewalk displays and thermometers to prove the difference. Dealer's announcement from 1950. Cars cost about $125 to $1,395, with a 5% discount and a period of up to 36 months for qualified veterans. The post-war batches featured new and recently used models such as the 1950 Nash Tudor. Ontario, 1932. A mobile classroom inside a railcar brings a teacher, desks, and supplies to children in remote towns along the tracks. These school trains served scattered families during winter and long distances when roads were poor. At the beginning of the 19th century, the slaughterhouse boys spent long periods at the coal mines, manually selecting slate and stone. Many of them were between 8 and 12 years old, and after the reforms in the field of child labor, this work fell into disrepair. Late 1800s. Some doctors sold metal chastity shields for men, claiming they would stop private habits believed to harm health. Families and institutions bought them until modern medicine rejected the idea. Berlin, November 30th, 1961. Crews install concrete sections near the Reichstag so that a new barrier blocks the border between East and West. The wall, built by the East German authorities, soon stretched for 155 kilometers with guard towers and patrols. New York, 1940. Isamu Noguchi oversees the creation of a full-size plaster model for Novosti, a stainless steel bas-relief for the Associated Press building at Rockefeller Center. Cast and installed later that year, the 22-foot sculpture became one of the largest sculptures. New York City, 1930. A rooftop giant checkers game at the Hotel Governor Clinton draws a crowd for a publicity photo. Actors Charles Ray and Lillian Bond move the oversized pieces with long poles, a playful press stunt of the era. Texas City, April 16, 1947. Firefighters are trying to control a fire on an SS Grand Camp truck that was carrying about 2,200 tons of ammonium nitrate. A few minutes later, the cargo exploded, leading to one of the largest non-nuclear explosions. 1865. Volunteers of the U.S. Sanitary Commission pose outside a relief lodge that fed, housed, and nursed Union soldiers. After the war, the group helped veterans secure back pay, pensions, and other benefits. Menlo Park, 1880. Thomas Edison tested a non-battery electric locomotive that pulled 3 small cars and reached about 40 miles per hour. The demo also tried electromagnetic brakes, hinting at future electric transit. 1890. Ticket office for Buffalo Bill's Wild West, a touring arena where horse riding, rope jumping, marksmanship, and borderline dramatizations were demonstrated in the stands. In some U.S. states, these marked boulders are drill pattern demo panels used at mining contests and training. Competitors are scored on hole placement, depth, spacing, and speed. 19th century Britain used the penal treadmill, invented by engineer William Cubitt, to make prisoners walk for hours, sometimes to power mills or pumps. It was ended in 1902 and later reimagined as an exercise machine, becoming popular after the 1960s. Early 1900s, Las Vegas was a small desert stop built around a railroad yard and artesian springs. Today, the Strip draws millions with mega resorts, bright lights, and shows that run late into the night. Early 1930s, members of the Women's Organization for National Prohibition Reform campaign to repeal the alcohol ban, urging voters to back regulation and tax revenue. After winning the vote in 1920, many women used their new ballots to help pass the 21st Amendment in 1933. Silver City Daily Press, New Mexico, December 31, 1940. A New Year front page found under a floor. The lead story quotes the German regime boasting of victory in 1941, capturing the tense mood at year's end. London, November 15, 1939. The Cardoma Café on Fleet Street is sandbagged and signed as a public air raid shelter during early war precautions. Months before the Blitz, many shops doubled as safe spaces so people could take cover quickly. A vintage Edgeworth pipe tobacco tin was repurposed as a small case for metal thread taps. The lid shows a bold handwritten warning to return the tools, a glimpse of shop humor and borrowing rules. Late 1930s, director Victor Fleming peers into a blimped 3-strip Technicolor camera on an MGM set. In 1939, he directed The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, 2 landmarks of Hollywood's golden era. Lorien, Greece, circa 1908. Miners gather with lamps before descending into the ancient silver-lead works. These mines once financed Athens' trireme fleet and coinage in the 5th century before Christ, and were still active into the 20th century. 1983-1984. Effects artist Steve Johnson's team sculpts clay prototypes of the Onion Head Ghost for the film, testing smiles, scares, and a miniature that was never used. The final creature was cast in foam latex with cable-controlled facial moves for on-set shots. Early 20th century. Inside the Catskills Aqueduct, an operator inspects the huge pressure relief valves that regulate the gravity of the supplied water. Built from 1907 to 1917, the Catskill system delivers drinking water over 100 miles from reservoirs. Late 1800s, early 1900s. A hunter lies in a shallow punt with a mounted punt gun, an oversized smoothbore used for market hunting on marshes. A single shot could strike many waterfowl at once, and conservation laws in the early 20th century largely ended the practice. A 5-peso banknote from the Provisional Government of Mexico, dated December 1914 at Veracruz, printed during the Mexican Revolution. Many rival groups issued short-lived emergency money then, so surviving notes like this are rare pieces of history. Lake Louise, Alberta, 1953. A candid fan photo of Marilyn Monroe during location filming for River of No Return. She spent weeks in Banff National Park, and locals often met her around the lake between takes. Mid-1930s, Germany's leader attends a groundbreaking for the National Motorway Network, staged as a show of jobs and progress. The highways, later known as the Autobahn, spread across the country by the late 1930s and aided military transport. 1919, Charlie Chaplin, along with Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and D.W. Griffith, look through documents during the launch of the United Artists Studio, which they created to manage their films. Their plan allowed talented people to finance and distribute their own work. London, October 17, 1814. A giant vat at Muse's Horseshoe Brewery burst, breaking others and sending over 320,000 gallons of porter through streets near Tottenham Court Road. The wave knocked down walls and homes and caused 8 deaths, remembered as the London Beer Flood. March 1958, Fort Chaffee. Elvis Presley raises his arms with other recruits during the induction physical for U.S. Army service. He served as a regular soldier, trained at Fort Hood, and later was stationed in West Germany. Cologne, March 1945. U.S. soldiers inspect the nave of the Gothic cathedral, which stood despite nearby blocks being heavily damaged. The cathedral's windows and vaults were hit, but the Twin Towers remained a landmark as Allied forces took the city. A lost 1980s wallet turned up with school IDs, photo booth pictures, ticket stubs, and a few dollar bills. Notes and receipts freeze a teen's daily life from that decade in one small bundle. Early 1920s. Experimenters demonstrate a portable radio set with headphones and a battery pack. The 3 metal cylinders are tuned coils for the receiver. Sets like this let people hear live news and music on the go long before pocket radios. A matchbox-size 1946 calendar by Raphael Tuck and Sons Lanointed, made to slip into a wallet or desk set. Mini calendars like this were common post-war giveaways from stationers and shops. 1889 studio portrait, labeled Elizabeth Liska, a touring giantess posed with a petite partner to dramatize height for cabinet card souvenirs. Photos like this promoted traveling exhibitions and dime museums across Europe and North America. Ilse Koch, a former SS guard in Buchenwald, photographed in custody after the war. She was tried and sentenced for abuse and other crimes. Hiroshima, late 1940s. A survivor shows keloid scars from the thermal flash of the 1945 atomic explosion, often leaving patterns where clothing or objects blocked heat. Such images helped doctors study long-term health effects and reminded the world of what happened. Early 1940s, Germany. An officer presents service decorations to soldiers during a field ceremony. Such award parades were photographed to record unit honors and boost morale. Magic Chef gas stove from the 20s and 30s with 6 burners, 2 ovens, and a built-in cupboard for heating bread in the high left shelf. Massive porcelain enamel and cast iron grills made these kitchen stoves the centerpiece of early modern kitchens. Albert Einstein never failed math. As a teenager, he excelled and said he had mastered differential and integral calculus by age 15. This portrait dates to the early 1920s, when his work on relativity had already changed physics. The claim that Marilyn Monroe was a size 16 is a myth. 1950s size charts used very different numbers. Her recorded measurements convert to about a modern US size 4 to 6, with small changes over time. The 1918 Spanish flu did not begin in Spain. Early outbreaks were recorded at an army camp in Kansas, United States. Spain reported the crisis openly, while many wartime nations censored news, so the name stuck. Western Desert, 1941. Roughly 300 Australian troops held a coastal town for months against far larger Italian forces with trenches, mines, and night raids. Their stand tied down thousands until relief arrived, becoming a legend of the North African campaign. A GE custom portable mixer from the 1970s still has its box and chrome beaters. These three-speed workhorses were classic wedding gifts, and many still run today thanks to strong motors and metal gears. An early 20th century steamer trunk, used by Jewish migrants moving from Izmir to Argentina in 1910, built of wood slats, canvas panels, and iron hardware. Millions carried trunks like this through Mediterranean ports to Atlantic liners, packing clothes, papers, and hope for a new life. April 30th, 1900. Engineer Casey Jones stayed at the throttle to slow his passenger train before a collision near Vaughan, Mississippi, and he was the only person who died. His brave last run inspired ballads and made him a lasting railroad folk hero. Western Pennsylvania's Green Man, Raymond Robinson, became a roadside legend after a childhood electrical injury left him avoiding daytime and taking long night walks. Curious drivers sought him out, but he stayed gentle, sold handmade items to passers-by, and lived quietly to age 74. Kansas, 1936. Dust Bowl winds drifted soil like snow, burying fences and sheds after years of drought and deep plowing that left fields exposed. The crisis pushed farmers toward contour plowing, shelter belts, and federal soil programs to keep the land in place. Winter War, 1939 to 1940. Finland's small ski troops used forests, white camouflage, and Molotov cocktails to stall a far larger invasion from the east. A ceasefire ended the fighting with land ceded, but the campaign exposed major flaws in the attackers' army. World War I caused about 22 million deaths, but it was not the deadliest conflict in history. World War II far exceeded it, with well over 70 million lives lost worldwide. The Brothers Grimm did not write the famous tales. They gathered folk stories from storytellers, books, and friends, then edited them. Their Kinder- und Hausmärchen shaped later versions with added morals and softer endings over many editions. A pocket Bible from the Great War with a stopped bullet. Many soldiers kept these in breast pockets, and some truly saved lives like this one. Small New Testaments were often issued by charities and carried as daily protection and comfort at the front. In the 1970s, some brands even sold mesh baby hammocks that could be hung on the back seat of a car, even before the adoption of modern laws on child safety seats and when many rear seats did not have seat belts. As crash testing progressed, these products disappeared, and by the end of the 70s, World War II-era Bowers MFG Codauer Trench Lighter, a windproof petrol lighter used by U.S. soldiers. It has a flint wheel, cotton wick, and screw-fill fuel reservoir, with a shielded chimney to keep the flames steady outdoors. Kennedy's 1963 line, Ich bin ein Berliner, was correct German in West Berlin and meant, I am a citizen of Berlin, not, I am a jelly donut. The donut meaning applied elsewhere, but locals heard clear support for their city. In the late 19th century, many Chinese laborers built America's railroads, facing harsh conditions and risking their lives every day. Their work sped up the nation's growth, but their contributions were ignored for decades. In the late 19th century, perforated spoons were used for brewing tea, making it easy to separate leaves from the drink. These spoons became popular in Europe among fans of elaborate tea rituals. Jack Johnson became the first Black American world heavyweight champion and was known as the Galveston Giant. His fame and strength inspired a generation, even as he faced widespread racism. In 1927, Santa Claus received an official pilot's license from the U.S. Department of Commerce to fly on Christmas using newly lit airways. Government officials even helped him prepare for the journey by providing special aviation maps. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, Princess Elizabeth made a public vow to serve her people and country for life. She fulfilled this promise, never giving up the crown. In 1921, the Volga and Ural regions of Russia suffered a deadly famine caused by war and drought, with about 5 million people lost. Many families were saved due to the aid provided by the American Relief Administration, led by Herbert Hoover. Jane Russell, Monroe's co-star in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, helps Marilyn Monroe put on a necklace before stepping on stage. This moment became a symbol of friendship and support among Hollywood stars. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, such containers were called silent butlers, used to sweep crumbs, ash, and leftovers from the table for cleanliness, especially in wealthy homes. They were often made of metal with decorative legs and became a classic accessory in European and American dining etiquette. Without such a wire brush, it was impossible to safely clean the chimney. The tool clung to soot and debris, helping to prevent fires in the house. The first such devices were invented by engineer Joseph Glass in 18th century England. Before that, even children who climbed through narrow pipes by hand were often attracted. In 1939, King George II and Queen Elizabeth reviewed the British Scouts at Windsor Castle before the Feast of St. George. Since 1934, such a parade has become an annual tradition. The 1951 Kym coffee grinder is manufactured at the German factory Kissing und Möllmann and is renowned for its precision grinding and reliable mechanism. The body was traditionally made of wood, and the working part was made of cone-shaped millstones, which made it possible to obtain equally fine grinding for espresso and filter coffee. The main cast of The Fast and the Dead includes Leonardo DiCaprio, Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, and Russell Crowe, each of whom plays rivals in a deadly duel set in the Wild West. Sharon Stone personally hired Crowe and DiCaprio to participate in the film, paying DiCaprio's fee herself. During the Vietnam War, military chaplains traveled between bases and combat zones to provide comfort, conduct religious services, and boost the morale of troops, often risking their lives side by side with soldiers. Faced with danger without weapons, they became reliable figures, conducting impromptu field services in such vehicles. Alain Delon and Mylène de Mongeau were both icons of French cinema in the 60s, starring together in several popular films that made them household names. In 1965, de Mongeau was known for her role in the popular Fantomas trilogy. In 1907, Franz Karras, a self-taught mechanic from Radom, spent more than 20 years creating astronomical clocks that tracked not only time, but also the phases of the moon, sunrise, and sunset, as well as the movement of the Earth in orbit around the sun. In 1925, a piano was rolled through Bourbon Street in New Orleans, a city where street music and spontaneous jazz were woven into everyday life. Crowds often gathered to watch these moves, as the French Quarter's narrow, lively streets echoed with the city's legendary sounds and local traditions. Levi's Puppet Rodeo is a traveling show that toured the United States in the 40s of the last century. It featured handmade dolls dressed in miniature Levi's jeans for the entertainment of children and families. In 1971, the Krishnas gathered in Williams Park, St. Petersburg, Florida, where they sang and preached to the public during the early wave of their movement in America. Their lively outdoor chants quickly became a favorite sight in city parks. A student from Kyoto, Japan, studies a giant folio in the university library in the 70s, at a time when huge reference books were needed for scientific research and the creation of rare texts. These monumental volumes were often handmade and could contain maps, botanical illustrations, or scientific data. The Messerschmitt KR200 is a three-wheeled minibus produced in West Germany from the 50s to the 60s. Designed by aviation engineer Fritz Fend, it featured a lightweight body and a smart engine that could change direction, allowing all four gears to be used in both forward and reverse directions. Elizabeth Taylor became the first actress in Hollywood history to receive a $1 million fee for a movie role, earning a record amount for the role of Cleopatra in the epic 1963. Her contract also included a percentage of the profits from the filming of the film and overtime bonuses. In 1994, Leonardo DiCaprio posed with his Russian-born grandmother, Elena Stepanovna Smirnova, and his German grandfather, Wilhelm Indenbirken, who played a key role in his childhood. DiCaprio has often spoken about his strong connection to his grandmother's Russian roots. Hyperinflation in Germany in 1923 reached shocking levels. By November, One American dollar was worth 4.7 trillion marks, which made daily operations almost impossible. People were carrying baskets and wheelbarrows full of worthless banknotes. In Russia, the holy fools, known as the Holy Fools, were revered for their extreme humility and unusual behavior, believed to have a divine gift, and sometimes defy rulers with their fearless honesty. Leo Fender, the creator of Fender guitars, could not play guitar himself and was more interested in electronics than in performing music. Despite this, his engineering vision revolutionized music, creating instruments like the Telecaster and Stratocaster that remain icons today. In the 70s of the last century, swimwear with a daring neckline and bikinis became a new trend, which challenged conservative beach fashion and attracted a lot of attention. The open-top swimsuits of that era symbolized the growing freedom. In 1958, the United States detonated a powerful underwater nuclear device near the Eniwetok Atoll in the Pacific Ocean during Operation Hardtack I. The explosion sent a giant column of water and steam into the sky, causing shockwaves that were measured and analyzed for future research. A Remington typewriter bought in 1958 for $83 now fetches around $860 among collectors. These sturdy machines are prized for their vintage look, historical value, and the tactile typing experience they offer. Street markets in 1970s New York were packed with bargain clothing racks and lively crowds, turning the sidewalks into outdoor boutiques. These markets offered everything from leather jackets to designer knockoffs, capturing the city's raw energy and melting pot style. Soviet soldiers performed shirtless morning exercises in the snow in 1965, toughening their bodies and building group discipline even in harsh winter conditions. This extreme outdoor training was a signature part of Soviet military routines, intended to forge resilience and unity.